You're watching BBC News. Nicaragua in Central America is one of the poorest countries in the Western Hemisphere. The government there has long been accused of corruption, political violence and election rigging. But it's been in the news recently for another reason. A Nicaraguan, Shanice Palacios, was crowned Miss Universe. Now, initially, the regime congratulated Miss Palacios, but it has since cracked down on celebrations, not least because she herself had taken part in demonstrations in 2018 and has suddenly become a symbol of the opposition against President Daniel Ortega's rule. In the protest 5 years ago against him, hundreds of people were killed in the streets. Ortega has retained power by jailing many of his opponents, religious figures, journalists and critics. And here in the UK, British politicians have just launched a parliamentary inquiry to look at credible reports of human rights violations in Nicaragua. The cross-party ad hoc inquiry is looking at meaningful steps that can be taken by the UK to address the situation. One of those political figures arrested is Juan Sebastian Chamorro. He's a former Nicaraguan presidential candidate, and he's with me in the studio. A warm welcome. Thank you for coming in. And you've just given evidence today, have you?
Yes. Thanks, Christian, for having me in the program. I was in this inquiry today, providing evidence based on three elements. The personal experience that we as a political prisoners suffered. We were 222 of us in prison, almost 2 years. The second element was to denounce the atrocities of the Ortega Murillo regime in the last 5 years. And the third part is the involvement of Ortega Murillo's government with respect to other governments such as Russia, China, and Iran. So I try to provide a personal perspective, a political the atrocities and international context to the.
You see, this is what interests me, because this is not a new affair, is it? He's been in power for many years. And suddenly we're talking about the global south and where countries fit in the new organisation, the world organisation that's being that's coming about. And suddenly people are looking at countries like yours, Nicaragua, and saying, well, where are their alliances? Do you think that's suddenly why the British Parliament is taking an interest?
I think there are members of parliament that have been interested in Nicaragua or human rights and religious persecution for a long time. And Nicaragua has just become like a bizarre case of religious persecution, elimination of human rights, a violation of human rights. We were stripped of our nationality, which in itself is a crime against humanity. So all these things that Ortega have done in the last 6 years have called the attention of the entire world. And one of our jobs as opposition members is to denounce throughout the world. So I'm very satisfied that the UK Parliament actually is taking steps in investigating and listening to what can be done in the future with respect to Ortega.
We'll come to that in a second. Why the church? Why is he focusing on the church?
Because Ortega sees the church as a competitor in terms of power. This is a tyrant, a dictator that wants to extinguish any source of power in the country. He did with us, putting us in jail for 2 years, and the church was the only remaining voice, prophetic voice, I should say, that was denouncing the injustices. So basically he grabbed all these bishops, priests that were critical to him. Some of them spent like almost 2 years in prison. Some of them were arrested December last year, and they were put together in a group and sent to Rome very recently. So he basically sees the church as an enemy to his, and this is what he thinks, an enemy to his power project. So he wants to control everything. The persecution against the church is going to continue, even though he released the bishops and the priests. There are spies in every church in the country right now watching for sermons of priests. If they say something that is not approved by the government, they're probably going to be put in jail as a result or being sent elsewhere outside Nicaragua. So this persecution is part of a...
So you're not allowed to go back? You've been living in the United States, as I understand it.
Absolutely. If I go back, I'll probably be put back in jail or assassinated.
We've been talking, obviously, about Alexei Navalny this week and Russian dissidents and the way they're treated in Russia. Does it feel similar in your country? And is your life, if you go back, really very much in the hands of the president.
Well, there are 121 political prisoners right now. So this is not an hypothetical issue. There are 121 political prisoners whose lives are at risk to start with. So we're really concerned because we have two political prisoners, one who died under custody while we were there. And we have to put this, Christian, in the context of Russia exporting all this technology. All the laws against international financing, all these laws against what they think is intromission of foreign powers, is Ortega and the Cuba and Venezuela regime. They copy all this technology, and if you take a look at the steps that the Venezuela government is doing, for example, and it mimics what Ortega have done in the last 2 years. So this is an ecosystem of dictatorships that are sharing information, that are sharing technology, that are sharing ways to repress opposition leaders, and definitely this is a source of concern.
Of great concern to the United States, who of course have an immigration problem at their border, and the more things are destabilized in Central America, in Latin America, then the more people turn up at the border. So the good governance is suddenly very much back in focus right now. What would you say to the administration in the United States about what is happening in your part of the world and what they need to do?
Well, first of all, Ortega is using migration as a political tool, as a political weapon to create more noise into the geopolitical spectrum in Latin America. He's allowing hundreds of planes coming from Europe. There was recently a plane stopped in Paris that was flying from India to Nicaragua. Now they changed the route to Morocco and other places. So Ortega is using migration as a weapon. He's weaponizing migration.
With the help of Russia?
I presume so. You were talking about hundreds of charter planes that cannot be...
That are coming through Nicaragua and sending migrants to the border to create a bigger problem.
Yes, they're landing in Nicaragua and then they continue their travel. And these are people from all over the world. It started with the Haitians, with Cubans, Venezuelans, and now it's from all over the place. But going back to your question, there is definitely an issue in the U.S. right now, the migration, and Ortega he feels himself as part of this team of countries that want to destabilize the U.S. and democracy throughout the world. And that's part of the testimony today. And he's using all these weapons in coordination with Putin, in coordination with China and Iran.
Mr. Chamorro, we're out of time. It's very good to see you in the program. Just very, very quickly, what could the British government do for you?
To work on the possibility of sanctions, individual sanctions to perpetrators or violators of human rights. We were stripped of our nationality. This is a crime against humanity. It violates the Convention on Statelessness and so many things that I presented in the inquiry.
Mr. Chamorro, it's good to get your thoughts on a part of the world that we don't often focus on. Thank you for coming into the program.
Thank you, Fraser.
After the break, we'll be here with our panel. We'll talk about Michigan.